We'd like you to confirm, during your tenure as Managing Director of GNPC, what investments were made on the directives of the Office of the President.
Okay. The first investment was the Gambia Petroleum shares, which we had 7. Initially, we were told to invest 9% of the shares, but because financially we were not strong then, I requested that let it be reduced to 7%, and the other 2% to be given to Social Security. But until when we are financially strong to buy back those 2%. But I think Social Security just took 1%, but we had 7. Then later,
sorry, you had
7% initially, yes, for Gambia Petroleum. But later we bought another 3% to make it 10%, and now GNPC had 10% share. And the other investment was the GFFI, where we were invited at the Office of the President for a meeting, and we were told that there are investors from Qatar, and they want to invest on feed and a rice mill. And the investors were interested in 50% of the rice mill and 20% of the feed mill. That the three of us, GNPC, Ports, and Social Security, should invest 50% of the feed rice mill and 80% on the feed mill, which we did. GNPC had 15%, and GPA 20%, and Social Security 65%.
You had 15% of the total
for
rice
and feed mill. Yes.
The feed mill was to produce what? Animal feed?
Animal feed, yes.
And the rice mill?
For rice.
What do you mean for rice?
They were supposed to process rice in the Gambia and bag it and sell it within the country.
All right. What was the third investment?
Those are the 2 investments that we did, GNPC. That's the feed and rice mill, and also the Gambia Petroleum. Okay.
You were a member of the Board of Directors of the GFFI Limited?
Yes.
Now, as you know, GFFI Limited stopped operating at some point.
Yes.
Now, could you tell us, as a member of the Board of Directors, as a shareholder, what steps were taken by the shareholders to really make sure that this investment had a reasonable return, if that was ever a consideration?
Yes. Initially, we didn't participate because we were told that this is a Turnkey Project, and that the investors were supposed to...
But this was a
Turnkey Project.
Turnkey.
Yes. That the investors were supposed to do everything, and we were just asked to pay our share of the investment.
By do everything, you mean they were supposed to construct the facility?
They were supposed
install the machinery?
Install machinery, and even management at that time. Even management, because even the feed mill started operation. They operated for at least 6 months, even before the board was put in place, actually. It was only when things turned otherwise that with the intervention of Mr. Jiba, who wrote to the Office of the President for a board to be set up, then that was the time the board was set up. But initially, there was no board, and we were not participating in anything in the management of the feed and rice mill.
Even though you had contributed?
Yes.
GNPC was content with that?
No.
Was your contribution significant?
15%, which was about a little over $1 million, which we contributed. But it was the directive, the way it went, because for us, had it been we were involved at the beginning, a lot of things would not have happened, because later we realized that even these investors didn't invest on the feed mill. It seems it is only us Gambians who contributed, because we asked them to prove it, but they could not prove it. You know, so had it been we were involved at the beginning, then things would have been different. But we were called and we were told, given account numbers to pay, and then we were told that hands off, everything is going to be controlled by the investors. So that was what happened.
Mr. Badjie, a turnkey project does not include management. It just means the project will be built and finished and handed over for operation.
Yeah.
Is there anything that prevented the shareholders from coming together and ensuring that there was a proper management?
Yeah, as I said, they said it's a turnkey, and even management was to be done by them.
This was in writing?
It was not put in writing per se, but when we were contributing at the meeting and so on, they told us that we are supposed just to pay, you know, and then everything would be handled by the investors.
So there was a meeting?
Sorry?
There was a meeting?
Yeah, initially we were called and informed about the investment at the office of the president. And then they asked us to decide on how much each of us would contribute. You know, then GNPC actually we opted for 15%, you know, because we were not financially strong at that time, I think, and maybe we don't want to invest a lot, because if you look at all the investment, the list was GNPC. So we are trying to make sure that we invest as low as possible.
Who called you? When you talk about we would like you to be more specific. That is,
we were written to, and then at the meeting it was Njoguba who chaired the meeting. You know, but all the three institutions we are written to, GNPC, Social Security and Ports, and we were called for a meeting at the office of the president, and it was chaired by Njoguba, and he informed us that there is a directive that we should invest in this. And he is the one who explained to us that the investors want to invest 50% on the rice mill, and because they are not very keen on the feed mill, they would like to invest only 20%. But the government was keen on the feed mill. That's why we should take up the 80%.
You mentioned Qatari investors. The records we have seen does not show any Qatari investors.
Yeah, the company we partnered with, we call PAL Investment. That's the company we partnered with.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's the same investors who came for Kunapro and so on, so they are the same people.
Did you learn at any point that these were not Qataris?
I was not so, because for me, I don't know their nationality. But we met, actually.
You met with the investors?
Yeah, we met, yes.
Do you remember any Saudou Gandor?
Yes, yes.
Is the one you met, or you met with all of them?
We met with Saud Gandur. There were two of them, and later also when we formed the board, there was another guy who was representing them as a lawyer, you know, and I can't remember the name, but he was... A
lawyer from where?
He's also from, I don't know whether Lebanon or Qatar, I don't know. But he was representing them, actually.
All right, as I said, I understand your handicap that you don't have access to documents, but we may call you back once we have all the documents from GNPC.
Yeah, there was a file, GFFI file at
yes.
GNPC, although I don't know whether it's there now. But Mr. Tah from the Ministry of Justice had a lot of information. He used to come and take all those information because they were investigating the GFFI issue. At the same time, you know, they wanted to counter-sue because these people sued us. They wanted to sue them, so they were working on that. So they got all the information from us.
You did form a board ultimately.
Yes.
But what steps did the board take to ensure that this place became operational, having regard to the size of the investment, the possibility of deterioration of the plant if it was not operated, and so on?
Yeah, when the board came into, when it was set up, actually, the first thing we did was to find out how the investment was managed, you know, to see whether they have contributed. We had board meetings where we call on them to give us the proof that they have invested, because we are told to pay into a certain account, which we did. And we wanted them to prove that they have also paid into that account their share. But it was unfortunate that they didn't prove that it happened. And also we found out that actually there were a lot of staff that they employed. Some of them were laid off, but some were there and they were not paid their salaries for some time. And we have to manage to see how best we settle that and then let those people go, which the board did. At the same time, the board also tried to maintain one staff, it's a Ghanaian, and so that at least, because he knows the history of the feed and rice mill, for him to take charge of that until when everything is finalized. The other issue was the rice mill actually was not 100% complete. And if I can remember, it's around 100 to 180,000 euros, which was needed to buy certain equipments, which actually at the time we are unable to do that because we are not financially able to contribute that 180,000. We are looking at ways and means of getting that. So, and the other issue was the Ministry of Justice wrote to us for us to hire or engage an accounting firm to look into the affairs and see what, at least to come up with an estimate of what losses were made since the plant was not operational for some time, which we also engaged DT associates. But before the report was finalized, I was not in the office.
There was?
I said before the report was finalized, I was out of office.
When you say we were not financially strong to buy what was needed to make the rice plant operational, what exactly do you mean? Because it was not only GNPC, you had other shareholders.
Yes, all of us thought actually, it was because the investment was supposed to cover everything. But unfortunately, they didn't do everything to make sure that the rice plant is operational. So there are few equipments which we are needed, and these people we are saying we should pay that amount, and we are not ready to make that payment. And also looking at the contribution we've done earlier, we thought actually we should take our time before we put in extra funds into this. So that delayed everything. We are looking at other means of getting the funds rather than us putting the funds ourselves.
Did you think at any point, did you consider at any point whether this investment was actually, in terms of a business investment, whether it was, well, maybe wise is the wrong word, whether it was an investment that was likely to yield you any returns?
Had it been we were left alone or we were allowed to do a due diligence on everything, then we would have made a better decision. And also, we would have also made sure that the other shareholders paid their contribution. Then the feed would have been completed. At the same time, actually, the intention, I think, was good, considering that we have a lot of rice growers, and we thought also if the feed mill was completed, then it could have been processed locally, and that would add value to whatever we have. But left alone, we would not have gone to invest in the rice and feed mill because it was not something that we were thinking. As an institution, for example, petroleum, we are thinking of other areas rather than investing on something like rice and feed mill.
So basically, you're saying it was not a viable investment right from the get-go?
I would not say viable. It was not going to be viable if it was properly managed. Had it been it was properly managed, it would be. What I'm saying is, as GNPC, would not have gone into it because we would have thought of other things which are related to our business rather than going to a rice and feed mill.
Okay. All right, Mr. Chairman, if you have any question, I still have to retrieve the file, which I haven't been able to find. The GNPC file on GFFI.
Mr. Badjie,
yes.
If I hear you correctly, you're saying left alone, or if you had the free hand, you could have managed this in a different way to make it a better investment. But my question is, GNPC, GPA, and even Social Security, this is not your core line of activity.
No.
And even from the Office of the President, where the directive is coming, there is no knowledge or technical competence in doing this investment.
That's true.
But the challenge I have is Managing Director GNPC, Managing Director GPA, and the Managing Director Social Security. You are the technocrats, you are the people with knowledge. Why did you allow a role reversal? Instead of you advising the OP on what is good, now you found yourself being advised, and not only being advised, but being forced to execute what was against your will. So, as managing directors, where does full ownership and responsibility come in if all you do is take advice from people who don't even know what they're talking about?
Yes, you are right, Honorable, but considering the situation then, it was very, very difficult for somebody to revise the situation. You know, whenever they make decisions, they want it done. And if you don't do it, you are in trouble. And actually, if I was sitting in a different environment where everything is left for the managing directors to make their decisions accordingly, it would have been different. But this is a situation where you are called and you are told, pay this, and you are given a date to pay. And you are told that if you don't pay, then heads will roll, and also like it is going to be sabotage or something like that. You have to do it. You know. So it is not a situation where we had the intention, or we are ready, or we are in a position to make a decision. We are told to do it. You know. So obviously it is something difficult, you know, at that time.
So can you help the Commission understand what motivated the investment? Why did the OP bring you investors and tell you to work with them? Was it benevolence, good intention? You said the intention was good, but the execution was bad. But what really motivated somebody to actually force you to do something without even the knowledge or competence in that same area that the person is advising you to get into? It has to be bigger than political.
I think some of them may be personal, I can say, coming from the Office of the President level, where they think that this is what I want and this is what should happen, you know, and taking the institutions as something they own and they can do anything with it, you know. So obviously it's something that actually we as managing directors, left alone, would not have gone for it, as it's not our core business. But I don't know where they come from, where the thinking come from to say, okay, let GNPC, Social Security, and GPA do this. But I think they thought maybe GPA, Social Security, and GNPC are the most liquid institutions at that time, you know, and they think that we can do whatever they want us to invest in. When actually, you know, as I said at the beginning, when they asked us to invest on Gambia Petroleum, our share was supposed to be 9%. But I decided, I wrote to them and said, we cannot do 9% at the moment because we have other projects that we want to do, you know. So they accepted, and then we went for 7%. And in this case also, when we went, they asked us, how much do each of you can contribute? We opted for 15 because we thought, actually, you know, since we cannot do away with it, we have to do something. And that's why we went for the lowest. But all the time we don't, it's something that we don't want to go in for, you know. But it's unfortunate, you know. It's unfortunate. I don't know what's the reason behind it and where their thinking is coming from, but it is something that actually left alone, we would not have done it, you know.
I just wanted to ask you two questions. Do you know how these people, the so-called Qataris, because it became known as the Qatari investment, do you know how they came to the Gambia or who introduced them?
I think they were introduced by Ansumana Jammeh. He was in Qatar then. You know, he is the guy who brought them in. And for both the CONAPRO issue and the GFFI issue, actually, he is the guy who is at the forefront of everything. He is the guy who brought them.
There's just one more question I have arising from the questions by Commissioner Sen. There was a meeting which was chaired by, you said, the Njoguba, who I presume was the Secretary General at the time.
Yeah.
The ex-president was not at the meeting, was he?
No, he was not.
Was there any talk of a business plan? Did these people present a business plan as to how these investment, this joint venture that they wanted was going to pan out? Because it's normal to do business plan projection showing you the profits and how long it's going to take. Was there any document like that?
At that meeting, there was nothing like that, actually, and we never saw anything like that. As I said, when we were called at the meeting, the only thing they told us is that the government is ready to invest, and these people are going to invest 50%, and we should take the other 50% on the rice mill.
But on what basis was the government ready to invest? I mean, normally one would only invest in a venture that you see is going to, at least looking at something, is going to yield you some profit at some point. Do you know the basis on which the government was going to invest?
No, I don't know, but it's just a directive that was given. As I said, had it been we were allowed at that time, we would have gone into such
but surely, Mr. Badjie, even at that level, you could advise the Secretary General, because you at least had some business experience. I presume the Secretary General had no business experience. You were running an enterprise. You could say to him, well, look, on principle, we have no problems, but really, maybe we should go about it differently. Wasn't that a possibility that you could have taken advantage of?
Yes. Sitting here today, I would have said, yes, we would have done that. But unfortunately, at that time, when we were called, it's just the information that is relayed to us, and we were told what to do. And most of the time, you don't question it, because when you start to question, then you have a problem. So this is the situation. We don't question some of those things, and it is rather unfortunate. It's rather unfortunate that we are unable to do that.
Mr. Badjie, are you saying even if the issues you raise are to the advantage of the government or in their best interest, you would still get into trouble? Is that what you're saying?
You see, it depends on what they see as a good intention. It depends on what they see as this is a good intention. Because you advising them, may be seen otherwise. That's the situation. Because they have already made a decision, and they are telling you you have to pay this within this date.
When you say they, who exactly do you mean?
I'm talking about the office of the president.
The office itself, not the president.
If I say they, okay, indirectly I'm referring to if the president says he wants this. You cannot just say, okay, let me advise the president. He will not accept it. You will see it as something in subordination, or you are trying to counter whatever he wants to do. So
do you have an example? Because we're all speaking in generalities. You have an example where you sought to advise, or somebody sought to advise in a positive way, and the president took it badly?
No, actually, for me, I have never spoken to him directly. It never happened. The only time I most of these directives come is between me and the Secretary General and so on. So I've never spoken with the President directly to see what his reaction. But the messages that we normally get, and the directives that are given, you just don't question it. So that's the situation, But I have never spoken to him directly or advised him on issues directly. I have never done that.
All right. That's all I have for the witness today. We are still trying to retrieve your file, and if we have questions, we'll invite you back.
Okay, thank
on
you.
This issue, and GAM Petroleum as well.
Yes.
It's not quite complete.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, that's all for today. We rise and we'll be back tomorrow at 10 o'clock.